The film begins by introducing a man named Frank Martin, who is currently sitting in his car. This time, Frank Martin appears much cooler and ready to take on his usually challenging tasks. In the midst of this situation, a woman with a sexy appearance suddenly approaches Frank and asks for his help to change her car tire. However, because Frank highly prioritizes punctuality and does not want to be late in carrying out his duties, he firmly refuses the woman's request. Unexpectedly, the woman suddenly pulls out a gun and forcefully orders Frank to get out of his car. Shortly afterward, four gangsters appear and immediately enter Frank's car, intending to take control. However, they fail to start the car because it is equipped with a security system that can only be activated with a specific code, which Frank is, of course, unwilling to provide. When the thugs try to use violence against Frank, the situation quickly turns around. Instead of Frank getting hurt, the four thugs end up getting beaten up, demonstrating how tough and skilled Frank is in dealing with dangerous situations. Not long after, precisely at 3 p.m., Frank arrives at the designated location, and it turns out his task this time is simply to pick up a boy who has just returned from school. The boy's name is Jack, and he fully understands the rules that Frank sets when riding in his car. Although simple, this pickup moment is something Jack looks forward to because he feels very happy every time he is chauffeured by Frank. Furthermore, Frank often plays guessing games with him during the journey, making their moments together more enjoyable and filled with laughter. Upon arriving at home, it turns out that Jack is no ordinary child. His father is an important official who is always guarded and escorted. However, it seems that Jack's father named Jeff and his mother named Audrey often get into arguments. After Jack gets out of the car, Audrey thanks him, as during her husband's absence, Frank has seemingly taken on the role of a father figure. Moreover, Frank's solitary demeanor is quite charming to her. Therefore, she asks for Frank's help once again to take Jack to the dentist, which Frank agrees. Unbeknownst to them, someone is eavesdropping on their conversation. The scene shifts to the villain's lair, where tension is escalating. At that moment, a man named Johnny and his henchmen, including a beautiful and sexy woman, appear to be planning something very dangerous. They then showcase a deadly virus capable of causing massive destruction, along with its antidote, which is incredibly valuable and possibly the only hope to save many lives. The situation becomes even more tense as night falls, with Audrey, in a drunken state, arriving at Frank's house and boldly asking him for a kiss. However, Frank, who holds Audrey in high regard, politely refuses her request. The following day, Lola, the sexy woman who is part of the ruthless mafia group, along with two of her colleagues, infiltrates the hospital with malicious intent. Frank, who also takes Jack to the hospital for his dental checkup, is unaware of the looming danger. Without hesitation, Lola shoots and kills the nurse and doctor on duty, showcasing the brutality of their actions. Shortly after, Frank escorts Jack to the doctor's room and feels something is amiss because the doctor and nurse who usually examine Jack are reportedly sick. These imposter nurse and doctor do not even behave like healthcare professionals. Additionally, a tattoo is visible on Lola's thigh, and Frank's concentration is briefly disrupted when his friend, who turns out to be Inspector Tarconi, has just landed from a flight and is heading home. Frank becomes even more shocked when he sees blood seeping from behind the door, and Jack is almost injected with the deadly virus. Fortunately, Frank quickly tells Jack to run while he faces these three criminals. Not long after, they eventually escape from the extremely dangerous situation, but before that, a bomb has been hidden under Frank's car. After they leave the hospital, Frank faces danger again when his car is shot at. Fortunately, the car Frank is using is now equipped with bulletproof protection, allowing it to withstand the gunfire. At the same time, Lola, who is trying to escape, manages to kill two police officers assigned to capture her. On the other hand, at Audrey's house with her husband, they have prepared a surprise party to celebrate their son's birthday. When the mafia boss arrives at the house gate, he immediately calls Frank and informs him that he has placed a high-explosive bomb on his car. Although the car is bulletproof, this will not affect the bomb that has been installed. To ensure his survival, Frank must follow all the instructions given by the mafia boss. Meanwhile, Lola suddenly reappears and gets into Frank's car. Without saying much, Frank immediately steps on the gas pedal and speeds off, trying to evade the approaching police. The situation becomes more intense as they race through the streets. where Frank has to use his driving skills to avoid obstacles and maintain distance from the law enforcement officers who relentlessly pursue them. Back at Audrey's house, who gets into a heated argument once again with her husband, which seems to worsen the atmosphere at home. At the same time, the chief of police arrives at the scene and reveals Frank's identity, disclosing that he is a former Special Forces member who has served in various dangerous places like Lebanon, Syria, and Sudan. On the other hand, the tension escalates when Frank and Jack are confronted by the threatening mafia boss. Wasting no time, the mafia boss immediately contacts Jeff and demands a huge ransom of $5 million. The mafia boss also issues a chilling ultimatum. If the ransom is not transferred within 2 hours, they will start sending pieces of Jack's body as proof of the seriousness of their threat. In this tense situation, Frank is allowed to leave by the mafia boss. However, as Frank is about to get into his car, he spots the bomb that has been planted on the car through the reflection in the water puddle around it, adding to the tension and the life-threatening danger. Shortly after, Frank tries hard to explain to Jeff that he is not the perpetrator of the incidents they have experienced. However, instead of understanding the situation, Jeff becomes angry and does not believe Frank's explanation, increasing the tension between them. In an effort to resolve the situation and seek support, Frank calls Tarconi, who is at home enjoying some quiet time baking a cake, unaware of what is happening outside. The situation takes a drastic turn when the police suddenly arrive and ambush Tarconi, turning the previously calm atmosphere into chaos. Not stopping there, Frank then contacts Audrey, hoping to convince her of his innocence. Frank also firmly promises that he will do whatever it takes to free Jack and return him safely. Frank then returns to the hospital with a firm resolve to uncover the identities of the criminals who have caused the chaos. He also heads straight to the hospital's CCTV control room, hoping to find crucial clues from the recordings. After carefully examining the footage, Frank finally manages to identify several faces involved in the crime. However, his investigation does not stop there. During his search, Frank also discovers a dangerous drug that was intended to be injected into Jack, which could have fatal consequences if not stopped immediately. With the situation growing increasingly critical and no other options available, Frank must act quickly. Shortly after, Frank was seen takes down the criminal attempting to inject the drug, showcasing his combat skills. After neutralizing the threat, Frank then retrieves another drug from a drawer, which he believes can help save Jack and turn the situation around. On the other hand, Jeff is busy preparing the ransom money demanded by the kidnappers to free Jack. Jeff is working hard to gather the large sum of money, hoping to meet the demands and save Jack's life. At the same time, Tarconi, who is currently detained by the police due to a mistaken identity, tries to distract from the tense situation by teaching the officers how to cook. Tarconi then realizes they have arrested the wrong person and feels the need to do something useful during his detention. Not long after, Frank contacts Tarconi for help, as he needs access to a computer to find more information about the identities of the criminals he is pursuing. After conducting the investigation, it is revealed that the criminal is a Russian biologist who once developed biological weapons in a Siberian laboratory. With this information, Frank quickly identifies the criminal's hideout and wastes no time heading to the known location. Knowing their location had been discovered, the criminals attempted to escape by boarding a bus, while Frank was seen chasing them on a jet ski with a woman riding along. Fortunately, Frank managed to catch the man and forced him to reveal Jack's whereabouts. When the man refused to talk, Frank finally injected a fake drug into the man's thigh, causing the criminal to immediately tie up his leg and run to get the antidote. At the same time, Frank calmly continued to follow him. Meanwhile, Audrey, fearing for her son's fate, had another argument with her husband. Just then, the police claimed they had found her son. They planned to open the door using a robot, but suddenly the robot stopped working. As a result, Audrey became extremely frustrated and desperate, so she could no longer wait. She then took matters into her own hands and ran to open the door manually. Once the door is opened, Audrey feels relieved to see that Jack appears to be fine and there are no signs of explosives around him. However, the relief is short-lived, as the criminal who kidnapped Jack had injected a dangerous virus into his body. This virus is highly contagious and can have serious effects on the people around him, adding to the worry and threat to everyone nearby. On the other hand, Frank finally arrived at the mafia headquarters, where he saw several people who had been exposed to the virus. Once discovered, Frank was confronted by the group once again. Meanwhile, the Russian biologist whom Frank had injected was seen pleading with a doctor there for the antidote, with the refrigerator showing only 2 antidotes left. Beyond that, the virus would spread through the air to anyone nearby. However, Frank suddenly appeared and revealed that the injection was merely water, shocking the biologist, who then tried to shoot him. But Frank's reflexes were much quicker, and he took down the criminal. At that moment, the doctor revealed that Jack had been injected with the virus, and his time was running out. The doctor then suddenly tossed the antidote, and Frank immediately jumped to catch it. Unfortunately, the antidote Frank tried to catch shattered on the floor. At the same time, Frank immediately runs and jumps to save one more antidote that is almost crushed by the container's wheels. Meanwhile, at home, Jack began to feel pain, while Audrey and Jeff started experiencing the same symptoms. Unfortunately, Jeff had to leave because he was scheduled to attend a major conference that would be watched by many people. After Jeff left, Frank snuck in to inject the antidote into Jack. He then needed to find the other members of the mafia to obtain more of the virus antidote. As he was about to leave, the police at Audrey's house tried to apprehend Frank. However, it wasn't difficult for him to incapacitate the officers. At the same time, Jeff, who was already at the conference, started coughing and accidentally spread the dangerous virus to the people around him. Frank then contacts Tarconi again to ask for his help in finding the location of the mafia boss. At his home, the mafia boss and a woman are watching news coverage of the conference attended by Jeff. It turned out they planned to sell the antidote at an extremely high price, aiming to earn billions of dollars from it. Not long after, Frank arrives alone, determined to stop the criminals' cruel actions and obtain the antidote for the spreading virus. In this action-packed showdown, Frank once again demonstrates his skills in a spectacular fashion, defeating all the opponents blocking his path. This time, instead of using his usual gun, Frank improvises by using a fire hydrant hose as a weapon, showcasing his ability to fight with various tools. Frank soon faces off again with the gangster boss who has caused all this chaos. However, Frank must be cautious in his actions because the only antidote available is currently inside the mafia's body. The tension rises even further when Lola appears, armed with 2 automatic weapons, ready for battle. However, Frank wastes no time and quickly handles the situation. With his skill and bravery, Frank swiftly takes down Lola, closing the distance between himself and the much-needed antidote. At the summertime, a helicopter is seen taking off in the distance, and it turns out to be Johnny, attempting to escape from Frank. Realizing the situation, Frank immediately gets into his super-fast car and begins chasing Johnny at full speed, determined not to let his enemy get away so easily. The thrilling chase leads them to a runway, where Johnny plans to flee to Colombia using his private jet. Confidently, Johnny feels he is safe, but the situation changes drastically when Frank suddenly appears, catching him off guard. Without much hesitation, they engage in a fierce fight inside the plane. The tension reaches its peak when a bullet is fired, hitting the pilot, causing the plane to lose control. The aircraft begins to spiral out of control and eventually crashes into the sea, creating unavoidable chaos. Despite the extremely dangerous situation, Frank remains focused and successfully captures Johnny, ending the criminal's escape attempt with his heroic actions. Sometime later, Audrey and Jeff, now accompanied by Jack, are recovering in the hospital. Frank, although only able to offer support from a distance, leaves a bouquet of flowers for them as a sign of his care. Afterward, Frank drives Tarconi to the airport, ensuring his friend's safe return to France. With the mission accomplished and everything back on track, Frank begins to take on new clients. Moral lesson from the story: if a woman asks you to change a tire, do it fast, because you never know when she might be packing a gun and gangsters might steal your car. Remember, being a tough guy means never letting a virus ruin a birthday party.